Thanks, Mark, and wonderful to see everybody. Before I begin, I want to do a little bit of my own advertising. I'm offering a course beginning in January called Mindfulness for Highly Sensitive slash Neurodivergent People. If you see yourself in either of those categories, either from the time you were young or from the current issues that we've been dealing with, I invite you to check it out. We will put the links in the chat. Actually, thank you, Rachel, for doing that. It's a 7-series course that will be using the chakras as anchors for mindfulness practice. And I also offer my Tuesday morning meditations. Tuesdays, 8 o'clock Eastern, 20 minutes. We'll be meeting tomorrow, then on a 2-week hiatus and back on the 23rd of December. And there is a link to sign up for that as well. So thank you all, and I want to begin, Mark, with a breath. So let's begin with a breath for those for whom a breath is settling. And for those for whom a breath is not settling, I invite you to focus on light. And this could be in your third eye, could be in the center of your chest, in your solar plexus, in your toes, someplace that focusing on light is grounding for you. So as you feel yourself settling into where you are, I want to acknowledge what Mark just shared with us about the season that we're in, the changing seasons, and how challenging that can be, and the times in which we live, and how challenging those can be. I'm going to anchor today's teaching in our Torah portion, Vayishlach, which begins with Jacob knowing that his brother is approaching. And this is the brother from whom he's been estranged and from whom he ran because he stole his brother's blessing, his firstborn blessing. He's scared. And what he does is he makes the decision to take everything that's his and split it in two, and send half in one direction and keep half behind. And how I read this is that he's splitting himself in two. A little bit later in the portion, before actually meeting Esau, Jacob wrestles with an angel. And our commentators say all kinds of things about who that figure could be. The way I understand it is that he's wrestling with his own soul, that he's wrestling with the places inside of him that may be less sacred and the places that may be more sacred. So twice in this Torah portion, we have this duality. We have this separation of self. And I'd like to address that in our meditation today. Soften your eyes or close them, whichever is comfortable. And simply take notice of your body. Are you peaceful? Are you agitated? Are you satisfied? are you wanting or needing? As you allow your feet to rest on the ground that can absorb the duality of who you are, let yourself sink, settle. And if it's available to you, breathe out tension you may be feeling. If you prefer, bring a hand to a spot that might feel stressed. It may feel emotionally stressed. It may feel physically stressed. And if you're feeling that all over yourself, gently take your hands, should you choose, and allow them to stroke or rest, calming as they go. And breathe out or release stress with your fingers or your hands. And we'll take a few moments to notice the light. Where inside you do you feel settled, whole, kind, receptive, curious, blessed? We'll spend a minute or two taking time with this. Potentially allowing ourselves to bring in more light, if that feels appropriate. Or to simply rest in the light within us, coming and going with each moment, and resting into the light of creation. Even if it's dark where you are right now, see the sun, see the light of creation. And slowly soften. And as you feel that light, and soak it into your cells, take an internal survey. Is there a place where it's hard for the light to get to? A place that feels hurt, shut off, on vacation. Overwhelmed. Dark. It could be lonely, disappointed, angry, exhausted. Or maybe even it feels like it's given up. Or something different. Or none of these things. If you're in that place of balance with the light, keep being there. And if there's some place that needs light, or care, or softening, or holding, or purging, see if you can bring your gratitude and compassion and willingness to this too. Noticing that it may feel out of balance. Where do I focus? The light or the dark? And if I let them engage, what will happen? Can the light soften the dark? Can the dark inform the light, bringing healing, bringing possibility? We'll take some time exploring these energies and this potential synthesis. If at any point the dark becomes too big, allow yourself to reconnect with the light Be gentle with yourself. Going as far as it is possible only to stay present and gracious with yourself. as we come close to completing this time together, I invite you to acknowledge yourself for your light, for your willingness to be with your light, and for the places that feel that they have less light, scared or afraid, holding, hurt, quiet. To have gratitude for all that you are. And to be kind to the wholeness of you, even the places that you find most uncomfortable in yourself. Thank those places as well as those places of light.
Thanks so much for guiding us so beautifully, as always, Rabbi Robin Damsky. And let's seal that beautiful practice, offering an opportunity for those of you who are in mourning or observing a yard site, or if it's your custom to join in the mourner's Kaddish, to do so. You can put the name or names of those you're honoring in the chat now or after we recite Kaddish together. If you're not reciting Kaddish, we invite you to please stay present to support those who are. And if you are reciting Kaddish, please join me by rising in body or in spirit, and you can unmute at this time. Buchdahl,
Yitkadash Shemira
Rabba,
Amen.
Dharma
Yama, Vrakshte, Vyamlech Mechute, Chayahom, Uvnehom,
Israel, Shabbat,
Israel,
Amen.
Avos Grieving Amen. Hey Shme Rabba,
Rabba
Hey
Mevorach,
Shmei Rabba Mevorach Le'olam Olam Me'almaya.
Vidbar,
Vidbar,
Vikramant, Vihase, Vidhadar, Vidhalev, Vidhalal Shemed, Vijabrik,
Tov.
Damin Kol Vechata Vishirata, Shpechata Venechemata, Shtaran Yana Vimrumamin, Hey Shlama, Abba Min Shamaya,
Amen.
Hallelujah, Israel, Avruhaim, Ose Shalom Vikrama, Ase Shalom, Israelenu Ve'akol Israel Ve'akol Yoshvei Tevel, Imru, Amen.
Amen.
Friends, thanks so much for joining us today. And if you're leaving us now, we hope you'll join us tomorrow. We have a beautiful week of practice that Robin kicked off today. Tomorrow will be led by Cantor Kever Spencer Shapiro, Rabbi Jenny Solomon on Wednesday, Rabbi Ben Ross on Thursday, and I'll be leading us on Friday to sit together into Shabbat. And hope you can join us for any or all of those. Thanks to Rachel Hugot for holding our tech space and each of you for being here. As always, you can continue to sit with the guidance that Robin offered. You can turn the sound off on your computer or device, or you can join us for conversation about the teaching and practice today. And the chat is open. You can just share your reflections on your experience today, or you can ask a question. And if it's a question, as always, please just write question all in caps, and I will try to work your question into the conversation today. I didn't get to be with Cantor Lizzie's yoga today, but Julie, it's nice to hear that today's meditation was a nice complement to that. So again, questions are welcome. I'll keep an eye out for those. Robin, thanks as always. I want to, I had not planned to say what I said about where we are in the year, but I did notice it for myself that, uh, you know, we just, I just came through Thanksgiving and lots of wonderful things about it, and also things that can be challenging or emotions that come up, and also this time of year, as the days in the Northern Hemisphere at least continue to shorten, and the impact of the shifting seasons on one's emotional life. And anyway, I was feeling it, so I wanted to welcome in that part of myself too, and I knew I wasn't alone in that. So I want to thank you for building on that. And you said something at the end that piqued my interest, when you were inviting us to notice our own light, and you said something to the effect, notice what makes it challenging, to acknowledge that. So I want to invite you to elaborate on that a little bit, because if we think about it, it might appear at first blush that, oh, we would welcome the light and want to repress or avoid that which is, dark or challenging.
Changing your light
My
there.
aura changed in that moment. I don't know what happened there. So what do you think?
Well, it's interesting because I'm not sure that that's what I had intended, but I'm gonna take the question. And I want to respond also to Natasha. The first example of Jacob being divided within himself was him splitting up his camp, his family, everything he owned. And the way I'm reading that is that he was literally splitting himself in half.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think, first of all, I had this thought for a moment during the meditation, and I didn't say anything about it, but I think it speaks well to what you just asked. Um, can we take in too much light? And I think we can. Um, we think about the text of Moses going up to the mountain and seeing the back of God, whatever that exactly is, right? And that his face changed after that, that he either was radiating so much light that he needed to veil himself, or that experience of that much light somehow disfigured him. And so he kept himself veiled. So I think we can take in too much light. And I think this is the same construct that we see in the story of Pardes, the four rabbis who go to Pardes to
Mm-hmm.
study mysticism. And out of the four, only Rabbi Akiva makes it out unscathed. So I think that the gentleness is to take in what we can process and assimilate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing with looking at our vulnerabilities or our hurts or our darkness, however we want to frame that. That we could also be in a situation where we open up more than we can process,
Mm-hmm.
or that we can hold in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So that acknowledgement of allowing ourselves to look and maybe open, and also to be sensitive to the potential that's all we get to the boundary of where we can go in this moment, or alone. Perhaps we need, excuse me, a therapist, a friend,
Mm-hmm.
some other guidance to help us process some of those things that may be frightening, or
Yeah.
overwhelming.
Um, Also thinking, but thinking both about the challenge sometimes of acknowledging the light, and also maybe the flip side of that coin, um, kind of noticing an attraction to the dark, and again, this is not necessarily a binary of white, the light equals good and the dark equals
Sure.
bad, right?
Right,
So we want
right.
to make sure that we're clear there, that there's a complementarity that's involved here. But also I'm thinking about that line from, The Sound of Silence: "Hello darkness, my old friend, I've come to talk with you again."
Yeah.
uh, and thinking about the being drawn to melancholy, being drawn to sadness, being drawn to not necessarily, well, it can slide into depression, but to attuning to pain. And how do we acknowledge that? How do we honor that? And how do we not get kind of sucked down by it also?
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because you're talking about seasons, and a couple of weeks ago, I planted the beginnings of a winter garden.
Mm,
And if you're planting a winter garden, at a certain point, it has to be covered because it's winter.
hmm
And so we covered it because we were expecting a freeze, and it's been open for a couple of weeks. And we noticed that it's been super cold. So I have these lights that we made like a high tunnel. We hung these two lights, not so much because the plants needed the light, but they needed the warmth. And I'm being careful
hmm
about what times and how many hours those lights are on because I don't want to simply be lighting up the night or
hmm
lighting up the plants when they also need to go into dark. And yet, like, what's the time of day that I can make sure that the heat will hold for the evening and then the heat will come in the morning? And so, there's that. I think you and I have talked about this before. There's the power of the dark. The
hmm
power of the dark is where we reflect.
hmm
It's where we gestate. It's
hmm
where we rest, right? And
hmm
so while so many of us feel that loss of daylight in these
hmm
winter months, at the same time, it's an invitation for us to go inside and say, what needs to be tended? And maybe what that I don't have time for in the outward time of spring and summer, what needs time to just let itself be, to let itself simply have its own presence.
Yeah, love that.
So,
I love really. I want to hear a little bit more about the winter garden because I thought it was what an apt metaphor of using the lamp to create not light but warmth in the dark
yeah,
for the gestation, that allows the gestation of the seed and the seed, the sapling, I guess. Um, so maybe say a little bit more about that. First of all, what is a winter garden? What do you plant in a winter garden? And how do you tend it?
great. So, a winter garden will vary depending on where one lives and what the climate is. Where I live here in Efland, we've had a couple of nights already in the mid to low 20s, which is not atypical, but it's not often. So obviously we're going below freezing,
hmm
and that means that anything that is tender will die.
hmm
So just as many of the foods that we see in the grocery store, like we see hothouse cucumbers, for example, they're grown in a greenhouse so that they can work with the sensitivity of the climate in which they're in. There are certain things that are more tolerant to cold, like brassicas, so like kale and collards and radishes. Um, that's a lot of what we planted, kale and collards and radishes. There will be carrots, there will be beets, cabbages, certain things, and herbs that are cold tolerant as well. But there are things that we wouldn't want to plant, like basil, which is very, very sensitive and needs warmth, tomatoes, cucumbers, things that need a lot of warmth wouldn't thrive in a winter garden. But some vegetables actually improve their flavor and their sweetness if they've been through a frost, like carrots, like collards. So those are the kinds of things that are in there, and they're more garlic, by the way, is a really good plant. It's a great companion, and you want to plant your garlic in the fall because it needs the cold to get itself ready for next year.
Again, this is such a great metaphor. I'm just thinking in terms of bringing that into practice of tending our own winter garden, right? Of thinking about and being attuned to the kinds of things that grow under different circumstances,
Right,
as you were
exactly.
describing, right?
Yeah,
Like what is that inner garlic or the carrots or the things that need that where frost actually does it good, right? Or brings out its sweetness
right,
ultimately
right, right.
versus that which really, yes, it needs to be planted in the dark season, and also needs a little, how much warmth does it need in order to be able to grow? I love that,
Yeah,
thinking
and
about that.
actually the
Thinking about the hand as the heat lamp.
beautiful. That's lovely. That's beautiful.
No,
Yeah.
that's yours. I'm
I
I'm
didn't
just
think about it
borrowing.
as a heat lamp. That's really really lovely. And even though these plants are growing in the cold and they need more dark, right? They do
Hmm.
better with more dark. They obviously need enough light. So it's always that balance of the dark and the light, the cool and the warm. And we think about the middle of the summer. Some of us are like, yes. And some of us are like, no. We want it to be just right. And it gets to be either too hot or too cold. And so, finding that balance um, is something that we do all year long.
Hmm.
Air conditioning, open a window, close a window, go to the pool, go to the ocean, go to the mountains.
Yeah. Well, let's close we have a couple of minutes. I actually wanted to ask you a little bit about your this mindfulness for highly sensitive neurodivergent people.
Yeah.
Maybe in terms of also thinking about how that would apply here. Thinking about highly sensitive, deep, empathic people, deeply empathic people who like feel things deeply, including maybe especially hard things like sadness or grief and whatever, right? What's it's, not my 2 minutes is not a lot of time to explain, like, all right, how does mindfulness work under those circumstances? But maybe you can give us a start.
Well, I want to say just briefly, two books have completely shifted my experience this last year, Unmasking Autism and Divergent Mind. And in reading even just the beginnings of those two books, I went, oh my gosh, my whole life is opening up. I've
Hmm.
always been highly sensitive and did not know, and have different ways of processing and did not really have language for that.
Hmm.
And I'm also aware that we've been in a very atypical state as Jews, particularly in this country in the last 2 years since October 7th. And the
Hmm.
stresses around us politically are just, burgeoning. So many of us feel hypersensitive in terms of just a stress response. And, one of the things that we acknowledge is that sometimes focusing on the breath doesn't calm or doesn't
Right.
help, particularly if people have been through trauma. So working with the chakras are 7 different potential anchors. Each has a sound, each has smells associated with it, colors, parts of the body, energy centers that are highlighted in those areas. And so working with those different centers to create a potential of like 7 different practices,
Hmm.
which could invite people to say, oh my gosh, I really need to be grounded right now. Or my throat feels completely stifled after the meeting I just had with so and so, and to do some kind of a practice around the throat chakra. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
You did. You did.
Okay.
Well, you began to. It's a start. People are asking what's the name of the second book that you mentioned. One was Unmasking
Divergent
Autism,
mind.
Divergent Mind.
Divergent mind tends to address more people who are female identifying, and unmasking autism more male identifying, although there's definitely places for both in each. But yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a beginning of, I'm sure we'll circle back to this eventually. Robin, thank you for that. And it sounds like an amazing offering. Thank you for an incredibly beautiful grounding practice to be in our week of practice today.
Thank you.
For those who requested, I put the link, I put the list of our teachers for the rest of the week in the chat. And we hope, as I said, people can join us for any or all of those. Robin, thanks to you.
You're
Rachel, thank
welcome.
you for holding us.
Blessings, everyone.
And blessings to everyone. We hope we'll see you soon.
Take care.
Take good. Take care.
Bye.